It's terrific to see all of you here this morning. Let me welcome you to the annual meeting of the African Development Bank. As you know, this is the 51st annual meeting of the African Development Bank, but also the 42nd meeting of the African Development Fund. And so we are having both of those meetings together during these annual meetings. Je sais qu'il y a plusieurs d'entre vous qui sont les journalistes français, donc je vais continuer à parler en anglais, mais je suis vraiment très prêt de répondre à toutes vos questions aussi en français après, si je me permets. Let me say that you, the press, are the folks that we rely on. Let me just, not even us, but also Africans rely on to tell us what's going, to tell us about development issues, the solutions and the challenges that are there. And so at these annual meetings, I'm hoping that you will help us significantly to talk about what is going on in Africa, the positive story of Africa. Of course, we have some challenges, but we've got to get a lot of those things out. It was quite interesting when I looked at some of the information on the media in Africa that just about less than 10% of all the news that I read in Africa, people, I think the Africa Media Initiative said, it's reported on development issues. And yet, we are in a continent where we have significant amount of developmental challenges. So I would like to urge you to do a lot more in reporting what's working in Africa, because you create a lot of excitement when you report what's working, but also challenges. But talk about development. That's why I'm delighted that you are all here today, and I hope that throughout these annual meetings, you will help us cover the developmental issues very, very well. Let me in particular thank the Zambian government for the fantastic hospitality that they gave us for these annual meetings and all the preparations that they have made. We are so delighted to be here. The turnout for this annual meeting is quite impressive. So when I came by yesterday evening there, I understood that they had about 3,000 participants that are registered, so which is a great turnout from private sector, from civil society, from youth to top government officials. We have at these annual meetings a lot of heads of states that are attending. Of course, President Lungu from here, President Debbie, Idris Debbie, who is the chairperson of the African Union, will also be attending. President Kenyatta will be here. Vice President Oshibajo also will be here. President of Ghana is also going to be, President Mahama is also going to be here, and a couple of prime ministers are going to be here. Now, what that tells you is that African leaders support the African Development Bank and support the African Development Bank very, very strongly. And so you will have a lot of them here. But those that you do not actually see here at these meetings are the ones that I want to really talk about. I want to talk about the 500 million Africans that live on less than $1 a day. They are not here. I want to talk about the 645 million Africans that don't have access to electricity, so they can see all the lights that you're showing right here. I want to talk about their issues. That's why we're here. I want to talk about the 700 million Africans that can't get access to clean cooking energy to cook. The 600,000 people that die every year because they don't have access to clean cooking energy. Half of those are women, half of those are children. Those are the ones that I want to talk about today. I want to talk about the Africa's youth population that is so huge and most of the unemployment is so high. And they are not in this room today. And this annual meeting is also going to be about them. I want to talk about the children, the 54 million African children that are malnourished, and therefore they can't even be here. The over 14 million African children that are wasted, the 10 million Africans that are obese. These are the people we work for. And I just want us to hear their voices and see their faces in everything that we're going to be talking about throughout these annual meetings. These annual meetings is not about us. This annual meeting is about what we are going to do to address all the challenges that faces them. We are called the African Development Bank. I underline the part Development Bank. That's why we are here. Let me say that a lot of things, many of you have just come through the session on the economic outlook in Africa. Let me just be clear that Africa is actually quite resilient. Now, you've all seen this report. Africa's economies today are growing at about 4%, and our projections show about 4.4% this year. If you look at the economic growth rates globally, it's about 3%. In fact, it's been lowered to about 2-point-something%. And if you look at the Europe today, it's growing about 1.9%. And so when you swim and you learn to keep your head above water, that's a very good swimmer. And so despite the economic headwinds, I think Africa's economies are stable, they are resilient, and they continue to perform well. And I expect them to perform even better as we go ahead. I also want to say that the bank, the African Development Bank, is agile, is dynamic, is working well to be able to meet the developmental challenges that Africa has, as well as help the countries to unlock their potential. And so I'm really delighted to be able to share that with you. Now, let me say a couple of things about where I think it's really important for us about the high fives. You'll be hearing throughout these annual meetings what we call the high fives, are priorities for the bank. Those priorities are basically to light up and power Africa. Second is to be able to feed Africa, to industrialize Africa, to integrate Africa, and to improve the quality of life for the people of Africa. That's where the rubber meets the road in terms of development. And these are the things that we are talking about. Why are these things still important for us in Africa? I just mentioned to you in terms of energy. How can a continent that accounts for 16% of the global population account for 53% of the population in the world without access to electricity? That doesn't make any sense. And that's why the theme of this annual meeting, it's about energy, and in particular also green growth and climate change. It's very, very important. I also want you to recognize that the second issue with regard to feeding Africa is so crucial. Here we are in this nice place. We've got literally hundreds of millions of people in Africa that don't have access to food. And yet Africa spends right now $35 billion importing food. If we don't change that situation, that's going to become $110 billion by 2025. And so we've got to make sure that Africa saves its money, produces everything that it should be eating, and gets to the top of the value chain. And we'll be talking about that in our agricultural strategy here. When you take a look at the third dimension in terms of industrialization, why is that important? Today, Africa only accounts for 1.9% of total value of global manufacturing. It's been flat. It's like a skating ring. It's flat. It's been flat like that for almost 20-something years, almost 30 years. No economy in the world ever develops without industrial capacity. And so the African Development Bank is working with others to spur and fast-track Africa's industrialization. When you have good industries, great manufacturing capacity, you create jobs. You create high-quality jobs. You become more competitive. And for that, you also need energy, and that's why we're talking about energy at this annual meeting. And the fourth area about integration, and I'm sure that you are all here from different countries. You can imagine if you didn't get visas to get here, I will be speaking to an empty room. But it's very difficult for many Africans to actually get visas. Regional integration is very important. I believe, and we believe at the African Development Bank, that we should tear down all the walls that separate us in Africa completely. We should bring all those walls down and build a bigger African market that is more resilient and where we can actually have a lot of shared growth and prosperity. Let me say that, and I just close on the African Development Bank. What has happened? He just introduced me. I took over just September 1st was when I resumed duty. It's been fun. It's been exciting. We've been working very, very hard. The bank has had its best disbursements, approvals last year. We approved a total of $9 billion for our regional member countries and private sector. And $2 billion plus of that actually went to the private sector as well. And we are also in a year where we are doing an Africa Development Fund, which is the other part of the bank. That fund has continued to do impressively well. We've been able to reach, basically in the 40 years of that fund, we've been able to deploy $40 billion and impacted more than 40 countries. So with those remarks, let me say that I look forward to your comments, your questions, and more than that, your own active participation and engagement in these annual meetings. Let me welcome you once again, and thank you.
Thank you very much, President. We would be pleased to receive your questions. If you can raise your hand, we might take two at a time.
I'm Stephen Nkoma from CBC Television. President, you have just articulated the issue of development and also in relation to the youth who are the majority of the African countries. What specific programs have you put in place to include them into these developmental programs?
Thank you. Can we take the second as well, the gentleman at the back? I'm sorry, please.
Okay.
Please introduce yourself.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Olisa Emeka Ebunike. I work for Daily Times, Nigeria. We know your track record, Mr. President, but I'm wondering, after listening to you and what I've read from your website, where the source of the funds? How are you going to meet the five highs? How are you going to meet it? And I want to track you, what is going to be the time frame for meeting all these five highs, because Africa needs it. Those are my questions.
Thank you, President.
Well, thank you very much. Let me say that in terms of the youth, we are launching at this annual meeting what we call Jobs for Africa's Youth Initiative. And that Jobs for Africa's Youth Initiative is a brand new program that we have developed to respond to the unemployment crisis that we see on Africa's continent, but also to respond to the migration crisis that you see in Europe. If you take a look at what has happened, just last year, we lost about 3,500 people sitting at the bottom of the Mediterranean Sea, all trying to get out of Africa to go to Europe. That's not the kind of Africa we want. We want an Africa where we are able to create jobs for young people to thrive on this continent. Africa today is the youngest continent in the world. But at the same time, you have a situation where over 60% of Africa's youth, are either unemployed, in employment that is actually very vulnerable employment, or they are dissatisfied. And when you have those kind of situations, what is supposed to be a demographic dividend becomes a demographic problem. And that can worsen social, political, and economic fragility on this continent. So we at the African Development Bank has recognized that we need to actually support our countries to create a lot of jobs for the young people. This Jobs for Africa's Youth Initiative, it's directed at creating 25 million jobs over a 10-year period. And it will also impact on 50 million young people over that 10-year period. What are the areas that we are going to support in this? First, we're going to support the whole issue of skills development. The problem we have in Africa today is that the young people go to the labor market and they don't have the skills that the labor market needs. So you can go to school, but you don't have the skills that the employer actually needs. And so we will focus a lot on skills development. And we're going to also focus on particular sectors. One sector is ICT, Information, Communications, and Technology sector. We're going to focus on agriculture. And we are also going to focus on the industrial sector. Let me break this down for you so that you understand what I'm saying. First is, if you take the whole issue of the ICT sector, everybody is talking about the fourth industrial revolution, right? But you can't have a digital revolution unless you have the skills necessary for that. So the African Development Bank's initiative is going to be looking at how to build the computational skills of young Africans, the programming skills of young Africans. and their ability to be able to do coding, that they can actually connect to the ICT industry and the digital sector that is rapidly developing. In the agricultural sector, I have always said it, that the future millionaires and billionaires of Africa will not come from the oil and gas sector. They are going to come from the agriculture sector, because nobody smokes gas, nobody drinks oil, everybody eats food. And Africa has potential in this. Africa should be a global powerhouse in food and agriculture. And we are going to work to help young people to get into agriculture, but as a business, agriculture as a business, right? The rich people you find in America are farmers. Rich folks you find in Europe are farmers. And there is absolutely no reason why young Africans shouldn't go into agriculture as a business. We are launching an initiative called Enable Youth Program, which is an initiative that will work in about 25 countries right now to get young graduates into agriculture as a business all across the value chains. Then we will also support young people with funds so that they can get access to funds to grow their businesses. It doesn't matter how brilliant you are, how great your ideas are. If you don't have no money to turn them into real business, they don't work. And so as part of our Jobs for Africa's Youth Initiative, we're going to put together a financing facility of about $5 billion dedicated exclusively to supporting business incubation facilities for young businesses, entrepreneurs in Africa, but also helping young people who have gone to universities and may have a challenge even paying for their own fees. So we will work with banks also to be able to deal with the issue of financing also of education. Let me also say that as part of our program, we will work with the industries to create what we call skills enhancement zones. These are going to be zones that young people will come into from universities and polytechnics, and they will be exposed to skills across different sectors. And so spend about 6 months within those industrial zones. That way they upgrade their skills, they can have a labor market entry, and then they can also create their own businesses. The future of Africa lies in the business of young people. And I see a lot of those around. You know, we want more of Bill Gates out of Africa, and I don't see why not, why we can't have that. So that's what we're going to do with the Jobs for Africa's Youth Initiative that we are launching here. We have full confidence and faith in Africa's youth. That's the future of this continent. And we've got to support them to be able to unlock their potential. Second, on the issue that you raised about the source of funds to support the high fives, let me say that first and foremost, charity begins at home. The bank is going to put its own money where its mouth really is, right? If you take, for example, the case of energy. For energy, the bank is going to invest $12 billion over the next 5 years of its own money. But we are also going to use those monies to leverage other people's money, the private sector in particular. We expect that $12 billion will leverage for us $45 to $50 billion by using credit enhancement facilities and partial risk guarantee facilities to be able to leverage and de-risk the financial markets to lend to the energy sector. Now, when it comes to how you deal with all of what I've just said, clearly the amount of money required is more than what the bank has. So how is the bank going to do that? In 3 ways. First is that we are going to work with countries to dedicate a significantly higher share of their own GDP to some of these critical areas. Pick energy, for example, which is the theme of this annual meeting. African countries today dedicate only 0.3% of their GDP to the energy sector. If they increase that to 3.4%, it will make available about $54 billion a year right there, which is the gap that we have to fill annually to solve Africa's energy problem. If you take a look at the amount of tax revenues that African countries collect today, it's about $500 billion a year, annual tax revenues. If you take 10% of that and you put into the energy sector, you solve the problem. But you also look at the massive amount of funds that are available in the domestic capital markets, right? And we have to leverage that domestic capital market. Take, for example, the pension funds. The pension funds in Africa today, it's just about $334 billion. That's money we must leverage. Sovereign wealth fund, $164 billion. That's money we must leverage. Private equity funds, about $27 billion. That's money we must leverage. And finally, we must make sure that the more than $60 billion that goes walking away, goes missing, illicit capital flows, we've got to end that. That's money that must go into solving many of these issues that we have. So I believe that Africa is not poor at all. It may have a lot of poor people, but Africa is not a poor continent. We have to mobilize our resources and channel them better.
Thank you, President. Further a question here and the gentleman. Thank you.
Je suis Dr Nelto, Économie Gabon Plus. Vous croyez beaucoup en l'Afrique, Monsieur le Président. Mais dans notre sous-région de l'Afrique centrale, notre intégration, qui devait être normalement le moteur du développement économique, se fait à dos d'âne, très lentement. Vous qui parlez au président, au chef de l'État de la zone, est-ce qu'ils vous ont expliqué la raison pour laquelle cette intégration ne fonctionne pas ou ne marche pas? Et quelle est la vision de la BAD à propos pour cette zone qui est extrêmement riche, qui a beaucoup de ressources naturelles en énergie, comme vous l'êtes à la conférence sur l'énergie, mais qui, en fait, ne s'intègre pas et qui ne se connecte pas, en fait, dans tous les domaines au niveau économique. La deuxième question, Monsieur le Président, le Gabon, vous avez suspendu le Gabon dans le cadre de la stratégie, du programme de stratégie de développement 2011-2015. Quelles sont les raisons qui ont amené la BAD à suspendre?
Suspendre qui?
Le programme de stratégie de développement 2011-2015.
Quel pays?
Gabon.
Gabon.
Quelles sont les raisons en fait qui vous ont amené à suspendre cela et quelle est en fait l'alternative à cela? Merci, Monsieur le Président.
My name is Prahanu Tasamma from the Ethiopian News Agency. My questions are two. How can the bank integrate its plans with the African Union, the African Economic Commission, and regional economic communities? My second question was asked, what would you expect from these annual meetings here? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Je commence par votre question concernant le Gabon. Je pense que les régions de l'Afrique du Centre, c'est très important. Mais il y a beaucoup de défis à relever là-bas. Surtout d'abord au niveau de l'infrastructure. En fait, le niveau de développement de l'infrastructure dans ces régions, c'est plus faible par rapport aux autres régions. Et la Banque africaine de développement fait beaucoup d'investissements au niveau du système routier, au niveau du développement des ports et aussi au niveau de la route transnationale pour pouvoir intégrer les régions. Deuxièmement, je pense qu'il y a toujours le défi en ce qui concerne la stabilité politique dans ces régions qui s'améliore quand même, mais qui était un problème avant. Et dans ces régions, par exemple, vous avez les grandes ressources disponibles, c'est le Grand Inga. Si on prend le Grand Inga, on a commencé à parler de Grand Inga il y a 40 ans. On dit le Grand Inga, potentialité, potentialité, potentialité. Qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec potentialité? On ne peut pas éclairer le bâtiment avec potentialité. On ne mange pas la potentialité. Il faut travailler ensemble pour pouvoir quand même débloquer cette potentialité. La Banque africaine de développement a pris l'engagement déjà avec nos chefs de l'État et avec le secteur privé pour pouvoir travailler avec les autres partenaires de débloquer des potentialités de Grand Inga. Grand Inga a la potentialité de 44 000 mégawatts pour l'électricité. Si on fait le Grand Inga, ça termine les problèmes. Hein? C'est réglé avec ça. Donc, je pense que On a déjà commencé le travail avec le RDC, des discussions avec l'Afrique australe, Afrique du Sud spécifiquement, avec le Rwanda, avec les autres, pour pouvoir optimiser la capacité de la Grande Inga. En ce qui nous concerne, au niveau de la Banque africaine de développement, nous avons déjà donné le financement pour les cellules qui font la préparation de projets de cette Grande Inga. Grande Inga, aujourd'hui, nous avons le Grande Inga 3. Et avec ça, il y a la demande pour l'électricité de 4300 mégawatts de ESCOM en Afrique du Sud. La Banque africaine de développement a pris l'engagement de financer à travers de ce qu'on appelle Power Purchase Bonds, mais je peux dire ça en français, c'est l'obligation d'achat d'électricité à travers tous les pays dans lesquels il y aura une interconnexion qui va transférer l'énergie dans tous les autres pays, sans en condition que les pays concernés vont faire les réformes, les réglementations de leur secteur énergétique pour avoir la tarification de prix de l'électrification. Si ça s'est fait, la Banque africaine de développement est prête de lancer l'obligation d'achat d'électricité dans ces régions. Donc, il y a beaucoup de choses qu'on fait dans ces régions-là. Mais l'autre partie de cette potentialité dans ces zones concerne la potentialité en agriculture. L'immense capacité au niveau forestier. Je suis vraiment quand même très satisfait de l'initiative du président Bongo en ce qui concerne la valeur ajoutée dans le système forestier au Gabon. Mais en ce qui concerne le Gabon, on n'a pas suspendu le Gabon. Je ne sais pas où vous avez eu votre information. On travaille toujours avec le wagon. Non. Le journal, ce n'est pas le journal. Le journal, ce n'est pas la source d'information. Moi, je suis président de la BAD et je dis on travaille avec le Gabon. OK? All right. Oh, yes. Ethiopia, in terms of how we relate to the African Union. You know, at the African Union, you've got my big sister there, Dr. Zuma, and I think she's doing a great job there. And we work very closely with the African Union, but also with the Economic Commission for Africa. We have a joint secretariat that is between the Africa Development Bank, the African Union, and the Economic Commission for Africa, where we try to look at projects together, co-develop ideas, and make sure that we are all synergizing together and complementary, and being complementary to each other. I can give you maybe 3 examples. You know, if you take the case of infrastructure, NEPAD has what is called PIDA, that is in French, Programme d'Infrastructure de Développement d'Afrique, which is the Africa Infrastructure Development Facility program, which is actually hosted by the African Development Bank. And we look at regional infrastructure projects that have been selected by the NEPAD, and then the bank and other partners fund that. So that's what we do in one way. The second way is, I can give an example, is if you take the case of agriculture, from the Malabo Declaration in terms of commitment towards agriculture, the African Development Bank, we hosted a meeting. Actually, it was just about a couple of weeks after I became president in Dakar to look at agriculture, taking it off from Malabo and saying, what should we do to turn agriculture into a business? And that is from where the bank strategy on agriculture was developed. So the bank is now helping, working with the African Union, working with Grow Africa to make agriculture a business that works for everybody, the smallholder farmers, the women, the youth, and also the commercial farmers. We've got to have room for everybody. And the third one, which I think is very important, is on issue of regional integration. The bank has just, the board of directors of the bank approved our new business model just about a month ago, or less than a month ago, under this new business model, we are decentralizing the African Development Bank. We are actually getting closer to the clients. We are going to have offices, regional offices in each of the regions, West, East, Central, North, West, Central, East, North, and Southern Africa. And each of these offices will have director generals. So we want to work closely with the regional economic communities. There are big regional projects that we have to deliver on. So the bank is getting closer to them, and we work to support the regional economic communities.
Thank you, President. We've got 10 minutes, so let's use that as best we can. One question each, please. One from Adama and the gentleman at the front, please.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Président. Adam Awad, directeur de publication de Financial Afrique. Donc, je voulais te poser une question par rapport au fonds de la COP 21. Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui, les fonds qui seront mobilisés dans le cadre de l'accord de Paris vont transiter et gérés par la BAD qui dispose quand même des équipes, de l'expertise et pour les dispatcher dans les pays en fonction des priorités, ou bien est-ce que ces fonds vont transiter directement par les pays africains? Et il nous revient qu'il y a des chefs d'État africains qui se sont plaints de certaines lourdeurs. Donc, je voulais que vous nous apportiez votre éclairage sur ce point, Monsieur le Président.
Le dernier point.
Le dernier point, c'est que par rapport au fond de la COP 21, certains chefs d'État se disaient que si ça doit transiter par une institution comme la BAD, ça risque de créer certaines lourdeurs. Donc, je voudrais votre éclairage par rapport à ce point. Merci.
Okay. Let me say that just to finish up on the request that the question from you on what I expect from the annual meeting. Of course, from the annual meeting, I expect that the African heads of state and government and private sector leaders will hear from us about our high five priorities. I expect that we'll have political support, continue to be behind the high five priorities of the bank. I expect that we will have a lot of private sector engagement to form partnerships to allow us to go forward. There will be probably some announcements in terms of key private sector investments that you see going into the energy sector from this annual meeting. I also expect that from this annual meeting, we'll be able to discuss what are the things that we can do better as a bank. You know, at the end of the day, you know, it's a two-way street, right? We have great things that we are doing. We also want to listen and hear from others about what are those things that we can do better and how can we do it better. That's why we are here. We are in a service position. And so this is my expectation from the annual meeting. That will be a two-way street, that we will leave this meeting as the bank, in fact, better enriched from having shared our perspective and listened to others about what we can do better. With regard to the question that you asked me on the COP21 funds, quand nous étions à Paris, il y avait des engagements qui ont été pris par par tout le monde au niveau du développement, d'avoir un financement de 100 milliards de dollars pour aider l'Afrique pour pouvoir avoir fait l'adaptation nécessaire, n'est-ce pas, le problème de changement climatique, d'émissions de gaz à l'effet de serre. La Banque africaine de développement a pris part à cette discussion. Et moi, j'avais fait l'annonce à Paris que de notre propre ressource au niveau de la Banque africaine de développement, on va tripler notre financement au niveau de le financement pour le climat à 5 milliards de dollars par an d'ici 2020. Et ça, c'est notre propre ressource. Et on travaille sur ça. Deuxièmement, il y a quelques semaines, j'ai passé quelques pays ici, fait la mission ici, et j'ai vu les pays qui ont été vraiment très frappés par les problèmes de El Niño, les problèmes de sécheresse, les problèmes d'inondation et tout ça. Là, ça veut dire que bon, c'est nous qui souffrons, c'est l'Afrique qui souffre de ça. j'avais annoncé que la Banque africaine de développement va donner un financement de 549 millions de dollars pour aider le pays à combler cette situation. Ça veut dire que la Banque africaine de développement reste toujours prête à aider le pays. But when it comes to the issue of paying up the money, I think that the international community have to keep their engagements that they have made to Africa, because Africa only accounts for less than 2% of greenhouse gas emissions in the world, but it actually suffers the most in terms of negative impact of that climate change. When it comes to our own money, I've explained to you on the energy sector how much we are going to put in on our own into that sector. But the point just remains that it's not to manage these resources first have to be available, right? You can't manage when something is not available, right? And so we all continue to work with the donors and those that made the promises. I always listen to what Kofi Annan says. He says the only promises that matter are the promises that are kept. And so we've got to keep the promises first. When it comes to the issue of the role of the bank has launched a partnership effort, in particular on the issue of energy. It's called Transformative Partnership on Energy for Africa. It includes several partners, and the bank also hosts a number of initiatives, including the Africa Renewable Energy Initiative, which was launched in COP21 in Paris with support of G7. The bank also hosts the Sustainable Energy for All. The bank also hosts what we call ClimDev, Climate Development Initiative, and so many other initiatives that have to do with climate, including the Congo Basin Fund for the sustainability of the Congo Basin. So the bank is a platform to host many of these initiatives. Obviously, the bank is a AAA-rated financial institution with the fiduciary responsibility to be able to manage funds and manage funds well. We make ourselves available to more financing to come through us, and I think the results and the impacts that we give on the ground lay testament to the fact that we can do more.
We're going to move very fast. Let's have two more. I'm sorry I've been looking in this direction. One here and one here. Sharp questions, sharp answers, I'm sure. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. President. My name is Israel Bioni. I work for Fair Planet. I have two questions, actually.
Just one.
Okay, one. Okay. My question is around capacity building. There's a lot of initiatives that are going on, and countries, African countries, signed a lot of commitments at the COP21. And what is the bank doing to help countries to implement the INDCs in terms of capacity building?
Thank you. May I take the second question now, please?
Morin Yamongbe, Faso-Zine, Burkina Faso. Je voudrais juste savoir, il y a beaucoup de projets, mais dans l'urgence, surtout sur la question de l'énergie, qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire pour aider les pays à s'en sortir? Moi-même qui vous parle particulièrement, c'est avec une bougie que j'ai fait mes bagages pour pouvoir venir ici en Zambie. Et les petits commerçants, des gens qui ont de petits emplois, n'arrivent même plus à démarrer leur petite machine pour faire des impressions, pour faire quoi que ce soit. Qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire en toute urgence pour parer aux problèmes énergétiques et peut-être un peu au stress hydrique aussi dans les pays sahéliens?
Gender sensitive, please, John. Last one for women.
I'm sorry, please.
Last one for women.
Fine, that's fine. Last one.
Thank you. My name is Maureen Chibo. I am the publisher of Real News Magazine Online. I was going to say that this press conference is not being gender sensitive at all. And that's where I'm going to anchor my own question. Sir, we have heard so much about what you're going to do. I want to know what you have achieved in the last 1 year you've been in office, and then specifically what you are going to do to include women, so because they constitute 50% or more of the population when you are talking about the involvement in agriculture, in informal sector, and even in SMEs? Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Let me say that in terms of capacity building for the countries, when it comes to the independently nationally determined contributions during the climate effort, what are we doing? First and foremost is to start from what we did and how the countries got there. The African Development Bank was fully at the side of the African countries in COP21 in Paris. I personally participated. The bank supported what is called the Africa Pavilion. In some of you that were there, I hope you saw it. It was the best pavilion for the entire COP21. It was financed by the African Development Bank. The African Development Bank also supported what is called the Africa Group of Negotiators, who are the ones who actually negotiated the text of the COP21 that you saw, to make sure that the interests and the peculiarities that face Africa actually got addressed in the text that was approved by the COP21. And finally, the African Development Bank also supported the African countries in the development of the Africa Renewable Energy Initiative. Now, that Africa Renewable Energy Initiative was launched in Paris, and it has the objective of being able to provide 10 gigawatts of renewable energy by 2020, and by 2030, being able to deliver, I think, about 160 or so gigawatts of, or 300 gigawatts of electricity by that time through renewable energy. So what are we doing to support the countries specifically on their INDCs? One is better planning of the energy sector. The INDCs also have implication for how you manage your agricultural sector, because of the climate change and all of that. So the bank already has, if you take in the Sahelian region or in the Lake Chad Basin area, where you have a lot of climate change, the bank has initiatives that is supporting resilience in the Lake Chad Basin area to support countries. We're providing, I think, about $28 million to Nigeria, and in total about $100 million to countries in the Lake Chad Basin, which is Nigeria, Cameroon, Chad, and it's one more country, Niger, and Niger. Because if you take the Lake Chad Basin, it's a crisis. It has shrunk from about 22,000 kilometers in the 60s today to only 8,000 kilometers in terms of the basin. So as it shrank, the livelihoods also shrank with it. And so when you saw the problem with conflict between herders and pastoralists and farmers, and you also have insecurity with Boko Haram and all of that in that basin, it's no surprise. When people are poor, when you have environmental degradation, and when there is no hope for people, that's what happened. We all came out of the fact that that basin shrank significantly over time. I was very pleased to have been invited by President Buhari of Nigeria just a week ago to Nigeria when President Hollande was there and other presidents in the regional security meeting where we were talking about how to revive the Lake Chad Basin. That's the kind of investment that the African Development Bank continues to do. And secondly is helping the countries to figure out their own energy mix. Now let's be clear about something here. You were talking about from Burkina Faso, right? And that you used a candle to deal with when you were packing your I give you a similar story. When I went to the United States in 1983 to go and do my PhD studies, it was my first time of leaving Nigeria to travel. And when I got to the United States, night was in the evening, so I took out my suitcase. And I took all my clothes out and I piled them and I started ironing them. And I ironed them for about 3 hours. And my host came to me and said, "But why are you ironing? You've been ironing for 3 hours." I said, "Because they can take away the electricity at any time." And she said they don't take away electricity in America, but when I came from, it was a luxury to have electricity, so I have to take advantage and quickly do it. No, we have to move faster. And that's why the New Deal on Energy for Africa was launched. Everything that is good for Africa must not happen always in the future. It has to happen earlier. We're sitting on potential of solar. I mean, let's even take the whole solar that we have in Africa. 11 terawatts potential of solar. You take a look at the hydro power potential we have. It's roughly about 350 gigawatts. You take a look at the wind power that we have. It's about 150 gigawatts. Geothermal in East Africa, Great Lakes area, about 15 gigawatts. Now you take a look at that. It means we have to work very hard to very quickly unlock this thing, because you can't power industries with potential. We got to really, that's why we launched the New Deal on Energy for Africa, and we're working hard. Let me also say that, but when we look at that mix of Energy for Africa, let's pay attention to three things. Africa needs energy to light. Africa needs energy for base load to allow its industries to be able to be powered. And Africa needs energy for clean cooking. Those three things are very important. And in the bank's New Deal on Energy for Africa, we're looking at a mix of things. We're looking at grid-based power. We're looking at off-grid systems, and also decentralized mini-grid systems that might be able to also help you. But for you from Burkina Faso, je sais qu'il y a tellement de soleil à Burkina Faso. Moi, je travaille là-bas, donc je sais que c'est comme ça. And finally, we are helping countries in terms of reforms of their energy sector, and also in terms of financing their energy sector. But when it comes to the issue of last 8 months that I've been at work, it's been very exciting. It looks like 2 years already in terms of what we've been able to do. Within that period of time, we've been able to, you know, we developed our strategies around the high fives in less than 6 months. Okay? We were working flat out as a bank. Right? And whether it is for energy, whether it's for agriculture, whether it's for industrialization, whether it's for integration, and also for improving the quality of life via jobs, the bank staff and myself as the president of the bank worked so hard, and we got that in less than 6 months. So you can be sure that we were not sleeping, right? Everyone was working flat out, right? Secondly is that we also, as I mentioned to you, the New Deal on Energy for Africa was developed. We launched the Transformative Partnership on Energy that brought the whole global community together around Energy for Africa in Davos in January, and I started in September. That tells you how fast we've been able to get things done. And I'm very excited about how hardworking the staff have been, because obviously, you know, you can have a vision and you can push, but you need your staff to be able to deliver that. And I'm quite proud of the bank staff for all the hard work they've put into it, and also the bank directors, executive directors that have allowed us to be able to process and move a lot of our strategies, even to come in here. We've succeeded as a bank also in developing our new business model. Somebody asked the question about, I think it was the person about speed. Le monsieur qui avait demandé concernant it's just behind the guy. The camera is blocking me, so yeah, I think he's the one you asked the question about speed. Yeah, yeah. I want the African Development Bank to be like a leopard that moves fast, not like an elephant, right? And so our business development model is designed to make us more efficient, faster, but able to work with others at scale. I believe firmly in being able to work at scale. You know, I've been in development now for some 30 years plus, and every time people tell you we have a small pilot, we have another pilot, another pilot. So Africa has a lot of pilots, but it doesn't have airplanes taking off. That's the problem. And so we want to work at scale, but we know that we can't do it alone. We have to work with others. And that is what we've been doing. We've been able to launch that transformative partnership on energy. But also you will also realize that we've done a lot of recruitment. You were talking about women. And so I normally wouldn't have put her on the spot, but I'm going to put her on the spot. I'm going to ask her to stand. Dr. Franny Luthier is here. She is the new Senior Vice President of the bank. And sitting next to her is my Chief of Staff, another woman. And how many do I continue to go?
Olivia.
And we have right here Nena, who's been acting for us as Vice President. You can stand, Nena, because so that they can see you. And we continue to go on women. So Olivier is Olivier at the back. No, but in terms of hiring, I believe firmly in gender equity. And as a bank, we'll do a lot of that. And let me just say that, Dr. Franny Luthier, she's the first woman in the history of the bank to be a senior vice president. Just tells you how much I take this seriously. Secondly, in terms of women programs, we've been able to develop in a very short period of time since I took over at the bank what is called Affirmative Finance Action for Women. It is a fund that is specific. It's actually been launched at this annual meeting. And that fund is a fund that will leverage $3 billion specifically for women businesses and entrepreneurs. And that's the goal of that. And so I believe that women, if you look at the reimbursement or repayment rates on loans, I don't know what men do with theirs, but the women pay about 97% of their loans back. And I always say that perhaps the remaining 3% that they don't pay back is probably their husbands that prevent them on their way to paying it back. But anyway, these are the things that we have with regard to our work with regard to women.
Colleagues, President has to move like a leopard to his next meeting on nutrition. You will hear much more of him and see much more of him throughout the week. We have a closing press conference on Friday, but there is much to do and enjoy before then. Myself and the media team are here to help you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.